Welcome to the 60 Plus Best Life podcast. We know that being in your 60s doesn't mean being over the hill anymore, and that, in fact, for many of us, the 60s feel more like a time of bright new beginnings, but with the added benefit of decades of wisdom and perspective. We also know that being in this time of life poses many questions and anxieties. We're happy to bring you conversations with those who have taken actions to create or enhance their lives to experience as much vitality, accomplishment, and purpose as possible by embracing change and the challenges in front of them. You'll also learn from health and wellness professionals, creators, and visionaries who are making life at 60 plus the best time of life. Join me, Daisy Swain, and Kimberly Fowler as we explore this life stage rich with possibility, depth, and new beginnings. By liking, subscribing, and forwarding this podcast, you'll be increasing the awareness that indeed the 60s and beyond hold so much more opportunity for enhanced health, personal growth, income, adventure, and satisfaction as well. Let's change those outdated perceptions that being in your 60s spells old age for good.
Well, this is Kimberly Fowler and my co-host Daisy Swain, and this is the 60 Plus Best Life podcast. And today's guest is a dear friend of mine who I have known for decades. Phil Swain is the CEO and the co-founder of a new fitness concept called Q4 Active. Phil has well over 40 years of experience in every influential level, ranging from general manager to CEO and everything in between. Phil most recently served as the CEO at YogaWorks, where he grew the company from 9 studios to more than 50 studios across the US. He also expanded YogaWorks teachers training program to a global level and spearheaded the development of MyYogaWorks online. Prior to YogaWorks, Phil served as the president at the sports club company, where he oversaw the growth and operations of subsidiary brands such as Sports Club LA, Reebok Sports Club, Spectrum Clubs, and Sports Connection. Phil's new venture is called Q4 Active, which is a new fitness studio concept, designed especially for adults 50 plus to support their combined physical and brain performance in a welcoming, safe, engaging, fun, and energizing experience.
So cool.
Yeah, I mean, we could go like an hour and just talk about all your experience, but I'll cut it there.
Not all of it,
Oh, not all of it. Phil, I want you to tell us a little bit, because I think this is be very interesting for our audience. Tell us a little bit about why you went from the corporate world to doing a startup in your 60s.
Well, again, I don't know if it had anything to do with my age, but I think my exit from the corporate world could have been maybe, I would say, mutual. When I was running YogaWorks, it was for a private equity group that I got along with. We were together for a while because we worked through the recession. And then the new group came in and, I don't know if it was really a fit. I had a contract, and I think at the end of my second year, there was kind of a mutual feeling that maybe I wasn't the CEO for what they wanted to do, which I was okay with. I think even when they came in, the plan was I had a younger president that was going to move in. And so when my second year came up, it was mutual, and I never had a severance before. And I thought, well, let's see what happens. So it really wasn't a conscious decision that I'm leaving this to go start my own at that particular time. That answers your question. I wasn't booted out, but it was a mutual exit. And then, what the natural thing, I didn't, I got advice like, don't rush into anything. I had a couple interviews, and then I started thinking, wow, do I really want to get back into it? There was one private equity group that were trying to sell a collection, a brand, and they wanted to bring in a temporary CEO to, build it up to sell it. And that wasn't appealing to me because I went through building something up and watch it get torn apart. And that's just not what I wanted to do anymore. So, I took a crack at consulting, which I'm probably not a good consultant. I don't want to charge it for this phone call and that phone call. And I liked helping people. But what I also find in consulting is you're not the boss, you're not the owner, and you can give advice, but if they don't want to take your advice, that's their business. So I guess that's about the best I could answer that question.
But Phil, can we go back a sec? I mean, because you went through that transition pretty quickly. So you were with YogaWorks for how long?
11 and a half years.
Yeah, that was a real ride. So that it was the VCs that were different. That was the changeover.
Yeah, you could call it, I don't want to say lucky, but Highland Capital, they were a good group of guys. But I also was in a fund. That was the fund that took Lululemon public.
Oh.
And we were at the tail end of it. So it wasn't like I was under a super amount of pressure. Plus, Mark Mastroff, who is an industry giant, Mark was a personal investor in that investment. And I had an industry board member who was an ally and a mentor in a lot of ways. So it was a good relationship. And I came in from some gentlemen before me that had started it up. And the recession slowed everybody down. I mean, we were go, sign a lease. Every board meeting had to come in with where are we doing a new location, and then all of a sudden it's how quick can you kill those leases. So we had a good ride with Highland Capital. They were supportive, and at the end, I did my job. They're not going to write about it's the best investment they made, but they made their money back and then some, and that was the goal. So, and I always knew that. When I went there, I always knew that YogaWorks wasn't about me. It wasn't my company. My job was to do the best for it so that Highland could sell the business. And I always operated that way. Like, what's the best for the business? And I think sometimes I read about it where a CEO of companies potentially got an acquisition, but it might not be a fit for the CEO, and maybe they don't want that company to buy them. So no, I think we did a good job. What I saw with YogaWorks when I went in there is I saw how special the brand was, what the founders had built. And I fully could articulate and understand what YogaWorks was about. I even had some pressure from my board early on. We should change the name. And I thought, why would we change the name? This name is like, known as the quality of yoga. And that's what we went with. And I think we did a really nice job. I mean, Mark did put pressure on, you should bring Zumba in or do whatever. And I was around all these purists. I'm like, no, we can't do that. But what we did do, because he was right, could we get other programming? Our job was to make it more accessible to people. And we had this great brand that was a bunch of purists. But and I promised our lead yogis that I wouldn't, I don't know if the words bastardize the yoga, like, Gymboree yoga or something like that. But what we did do is we created what we called, we had SculptWorks, which was a fitness class where we could mount the bands on the wall, but still you would be barefoot in the class. So we could kind of maintain the sanctity of a yoga room. And then we did our own bar works too, when bar was popular. And I had a good run with YogaWorks. I felt really good about the board. They were good people. They were supportive, and they weren't, I didn't have to have a call every week on the numbers. We would have our quarterly board meetings, and that was a really good experience for me. Yeah.
And so at what point did you decide to, okay, it's time to start your own thing?
Well, we sold to a new venture capital group. And, even from the get-go, when they were doing the diligence, we're not Highland Capital. We're out here in 3 to 5 years. So I could feel the pedal to the metal with these guys. And whatever, we'll just skip that chapter 2 years. I still think we did a good job. They wanted to acquire. We did some great acquisitions, bought Yoga Tree. I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And then I think, the headwinds hit. We had a great one with YogaWorks where we were the brand. We were the one taking it out to the masses and the people. And next thing you know, there's Core Power started to explode, and this brand, and then ClassPass hit. And, so we hit some headwinds, and I don't know, the new guys, maybe they wanted to go in a different direction. We don't need to get into all of that. But so what brought me to this is it was time to leave. And it was, it's interesting. 23 years I was with Sports Club, and, I was with founder Mike Talla and Nanette, and, it's almost like family. And, emotionally and everything else, leaving that to go try YogaWorks, to go work for these private equity guys, that was a big step for me at the time. And there was quite an adjustment within the first year. But then after the time that I put into YogaWorks, and then we somewhat successfully, it was a sale, reasonably successful sale. There was another great experience as I went through that opportunity to work with private equity, to go out and raise money with Highland Capital and learn a lot about that part of the industry was valuable. So when I stepped off from YogaWorks and really not 100% sure what I wanted to do, and then made the decision to start this, which we can talk about a little bit more, I had a certain level of confidence. In fact, when I go back and look at some confidence builders, I was at Sports Club and Mike made the deal to build Reebok Sports Club in New York. That's another whole story podcast one day. But I came home to my wife one time from New York, and this was going to be a 140,000 square foot club in Manhattan.
Wow.
Probably staffing 250 employees. And I kept thinking, oh my God, am I going to be able to do this? And I didn't do it alone. I was part of a team, but that experience of launching, and Reebok was wildly successful, gave me a lot of confidence, even at YogaWorks, when it's like, okay, let's build a YogaWorks in Manhattan. Let's build a YogaWorks here. So each step along the way through my experiences helped me develop confidence to take the step where I'm at today.
Makes perfect sense. That's, whenever you're doing the first thing the first time, right? We've all been there. It's like, is this going to work? And how am I going to iterate this? And scary stuff. But, that's one of the things I think that really comes up about being 60 plus, right? Is you've been around the block and you've tried a bunch of things, and the confidence can really be there.
Yeah. Well, it's trying things and also having the opportunity. I've never been an entrepreneur before, but I worked with some incredible entrepreneurs. Mike Talla, who founded the Sports Club, was just, I learned so much, and boy, we went through so many things through that company. And then going to YogaWorks and Mark Mastroff being my board member, he's another, star in the industry. So I had the opportunity to be around good people, good team, and learn. And that gives you confidence too.
Yeah, for sure.
Was. Yeah. No, I said that when I opened Jazz, it was the fact that I was the COO of a, $200 million company, and I had 500 employees under me, and I was a lawyer, and it gave me the confidence. I knew I could do this. It's like I was in my 40s, and it was like, I can do this. So I know that feeling.
And you were still scared, weren't you? No?
Scared? I don't know that I don't know if it was.
It really doesn't do scared. Okay, and apprehensive?
No, I knew what I wanted to do. I was frustrated, but that's being an entrepreneur.
Right. You were ready. Sounds like you were ready.
Yeah. Phil was right. Phil and I actually, we were talking about, Q4 from the beginning. We used to meet and have a cocktail, tequila, and talk about what we were going through.
That's right. We were both kind of doing our decks at the time.
Yep.
And you were getting ready to launch your wellness concept.
Yep.
And that was an interesting time. From putting the deck together and going out and actually, can I raise this money? That was a big question too.
So how long have you been working on this new venture?
Well, I would say this started mid 2019, and started to go out and raise money. And then, of course, what happened in 2020, and that kind of stalled things a bit. But I kept swinging all the way through 2020, and you learn to deal with the rejection, and hearing things like older people are never coming out of their houses again, and Peloton's going to rule the world, and bricks and mortar. And I would get angry about it. I wouldn't get angry at the people I was pitching, but angry at the press, and because I just knew what was going to happen. I mean, this wasn't going to last forever. And I was in the fitness industry and the yoga industry long enough to know what people like, and people don't like being locked up in their homes. And listen, the online thing was great for the pandemic. And I guess the word now is multi-channel. People want to have it, but let's face it, we're people.
Yeah. And
socialization and being around people, even though sometimes we think we don't like people, sometimes we don't, but we want to be around people. Yeah.
All through the pandemic, I was going to the core power yoga outside classes. So we were.
Well, I will tell you this. I could honestly, there's a gentleman who I brought on and gave a little equity to be my mentor. He was successful in multiple brands in the fitness industry, and opened up in the United States and in Australia. And he was not a CEO anymore. And he had been. And we would say, like, how lucky are we that we're not? I can't imagine being the CEO of YogaWorks when that hit, and just what some of these CEOs were going through. So even though I was trying to raise money, I would look and go,
dodge that.
Not want to be. Yeah. And then, when the whole social issues started to erupt as well, and how are you managing your way through that? And I was thinking, thank goodness, I avoided that, not, by happenstance. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had nightmares that I still owned Jazz when all that was happening. I really did. I had nightmares, and I'd wake up and it was like, oh my God, I give so many of the small studios credit for just flipping on a dime and doing online and outside, and my heart swelled for all of them. It was just like, wow, you go. Is that, oh geez, I would not have. It'd been awful.
Yeah, tough times.
A lot of resilience there. Yeah.
No, for sure.
So you were gestating during the pandemic and raising funds during that time.
Yeah, it was, the idea, well, there's a little story on how the idea of Q4 came about, but, once it was there, it was going out and pitching, and I had a lot of good contacts. I felt comfortable talking to private equity people because I was trained very well by Highland Capital. I mean, I learned how to 3 points per page, no more than cover 3 things per page. And so I had been rehearsed enough and trained enough. And then through the process when we were selling it. So I felt comfortable, and I knew the lingo. And I would get, even though there was rejection, I would get a lot of encouragement. Like, this is incredible. This is a big white space. It's a great idea, just a little too early for us. And I kind of understood a lot of that. But fortunately, it started out, my first investor, of course, was Mike Talla, who I worked with for 23 years. And that boom, one slug gave me, some confidence. And then the next group that started to come in were some industry people that I knew. So it was, and a brother-in-law. So you could honestly say that this got rolling initially with friends and family, which was great. But a lot of good conversations with some of the private equity people. Their response, even though we can't invest right now, still gave me confidence that I was on the right path to what this business can be.
Yeah. Seems like the first investor is really important for everybody.
Yeah, you got to crack the ice, So,
right.
I remember the day that he, I went and presented to him, and here this guy I had worked for 23 years, and I got the phone call the next day, and he said, "Yeah, I'll put in X amount," and it was like, okay, this could be real,
Yeah.
And then what happens? You get some of that early money, and then when the pandemic slowed things down, then my anxiety was, are these guys going to ask for their money back? And then I thought, I don't know if they're allowed to ask for their money back, but it was a group of people who were very patient with me through this process, so that was a good thing.
Yeah.
Tell us how you did come up with this idea. You said there was a story to that.
Story. Okay. No. All right. Well, I started to see, here's how I tell the story. I started the gym business in 1975 at Big Tanny's, back in Detroit. I think I was 18 years old. And in my opinion, the boomers built the industry, launched it to where it is today. Okay?
Sure.
And now you take a look around, and I started to see this at YogaWorks, is like, there's really nobody paying attention to the older demographic. It's I don't know. I don't even know the Z's, the X's, what.
Right.
And what I felt at YogaWorks was, even though we were going to be yoga for everyone, and we wanted to appeal to the young, to the old, I felt, well, this is a product and a brand that could be really appealing to the aging adult, because it could be gentler, it could be the meditation, the mindfulness, but still, it wasn't solely focused on older adults. So when I went out and I took a crack at consulting, I think Kimberly, Susie from Unplug. I did that was one of my better consulting experiences, because she's incredible. She's bright. It was kind of right in my alley of meditation studio, yoga studio. Did some consulting for a big MMA star that wanted to open up a club, but even at that, it was the things I mentioned earlier. It's not my business. They don't have to make the decisions that you want them to make. I wasn't feeling it with the consulting. So Tony, who I brought in, who's my partner now, I said, I want to take my consulting and turn it into a management company. And I saw this feeling of this opportunity of older adults. And the other thing, just a sidebar on that, is you pick up the Wall Street Journal, and the growth industry is hip replacements, knee replacements. It's not like, how do we stop this? It's like, look how this is going to grow. And it's just, it's like, are you kidding me? So I started to research retirement homes, just not so much assisted living, but in that genre. And nobody's really doing anything of any quality from fitness for these people. And then I started to see these memory care centers. It wasn't just assisted living, specially built for memory care. And that's when I started to learn a little bit more about what was happening with Alzheimer's and dementia. And, it's kind of scary what's coming down the pike with that. And so with that, in consulting, we brought in a piece of equipment to the MMA called SmartFit, which is a dual task training, almost kind of gamification. And we took it into the camp because he's an athlete, and I think the Lakers have one, but 80-90% of her sales were clinical sales for people with, recovering from traumatic brain injury or early diagnosis of dementia. And, I kind of looked at it and I thought, wow, this would be incredible for older adults. And she actually had some programming for the older adults. And I said, wow, this could be a franchise. And I even spoke with the owner of SmartFit that maybe we could, take this into a franchise. And I don't want to make the story too long, but this is part of the story. So there was a little fitness center out here in Woodland Hills called Defy Aging. And I would go by it. I saw it and I thought it was kind of a skincare place. So one of my fellow board members at the Boys and Girls Club, I made a compliment how he looked like he lost weight, because I was the fitness guy. It looks like you're looking good, Don.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, yeah, I work out at Defy Aging. I said, tell me about that place, because I didn't really know what it was. And he goes, well, this guy could use your help. And I went and met with the gentleman, and what he had done, he was ahead of his time. And he was kind of the genesis of what we're doing here. Is he had started this and with the vision of doing what we're doing, but more just a place for older adults to feel comfortable. But it was kind of a circuit training. And when I walked in the studio, he had a SmartFit in there. I thought, well, this is just so speeding up the story. We made a decision that it's best that he shut that studio and exchange for whatever database of members he had in this area and that content, we would exchange that for equity in this new company. So I didn't start from scratch. I guess you could say it was kind of a redux of what somebody had started, but my vision was to put it in a better box, run by a person that, like myself, that's got experience in this area, and put a lot more focus into the cognitive than they were doing. So that's kind of where it started. And then putting it together, you know how you want to, well, again, you don't have your marketing department, you don't have your CEO, you don't have all of those things. But I did have a son-in-law who was a graphic artist who was helping us put the deck together. And the name Q4 Active came up in a brainstorming session with Tony and Raphael and myself. And to me, the vision, when I heard that, I thought, wow, this is
good.
Yeah. If we don't get it now, we'll get it in the fourth quarter. We'll get it done by the fourth quarter.
Right.
And we thought, well, fourth quarter of your life should be your best quarter, but you better be ready for it. And, you can still make it happen in the fourth quarter,
Yeah.
So I thought that the brand would be kind of fun to play with, but also it should be serious. I felt I want it to be like, hey, you got to wake up and you got to do something. Okay. But at the same time, I want it to be light and kind of a fun brand. And when I hired a marketing company, this was a group of guys out of Toronto. They're called Age of Majority. They were veteran marketing people that decided to specialize in older adults. And we did focus groups. And I think one of the owners' wife's in PR, and she goes, that fourth quarter seems kind of like scary, like it could scare people. And I said, I don't care. I said, that's the message. And so in the focus groups, about a third of the people didn't care about the name. A third of the people thought it was all right. And maybe less than a third thought, wow, that seems fourth quarter sounds scary. And I stuck to my guns. I said, I'm sticking with it. And that's how the brand came about.
Yeah.
So anyways, there's the story.
That's great. I think I get it right away. I mean, I think that's really smart, right?
Some people get it right away, and I get a chuckle out of it.
Uh-huh.
And some people don't. But you got to tell your story.
Yeah.
With startups, and this is people that are listening that might they love your story, and they might think of like they might think of doing a startup in 60's and beyond. Like what? They're challenging. They're not for the faint of heart. We both know that. What advice, what keeps you motivated right now? What keeps you going right now?
Well, one, I believe in this. Okay. I like to think it's a little bit of passion, a little bit of mission driven, as I stated earlier, like, wow, somebody's got to do something about this. Because even when I was in fitness, I felt that way, tried to convert people. And so that part keeps me motivated. And then there are times that I thought, I'm turning 66 this year. Other people are retiring. And I thought, should I be doing that? But you know what? Getting up every morning and, going into the office and having that routine, it's a good thing, and again, I really believe in this product and what we're going to put out there and where we can take it. So I'm still motivated by the mission. I think this is what's going to keep me healthy and young. When you think about, I'm not like a super big reader of books, but I started reading more and learning more about the brain. I'm not a scientist, and there's so many positive things that I was finding on it and learning, and like, wow, this information should get out to more of the general population, and learning that me getting up and going in every day is good for my brain health. It's not the only thing. Some people say, well, I still go in the office every day. Well, that's great, but you need to do more than that. But what else would I be doing? Do I want to go back and work for somebody else? No, not at that stage of my life. I really did not want to do that. I mean, I am working for my investors. They're not private equity guys breathing down my neck, but I feel an obligation to these people because, they entrusted in me and believed in me, and that's motivating to work to those results. So short answer, if I could say, is I really believe in what we're doing. And I like the idea that I get up every day, I get my workout in, I come in, and guess what? I can also leave when I want to leave without answering to anybody. Yeah. So there is, with the stress, if you want to call it, of taking the responsibility of the business, with that comes the freedom of you're the boss, the real boss. I've been bosses at levels, but there's always been one above me or two above me or however many.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what drives a lot of folks I work with who are going into their 50s and looking ahead, like becoming a re-employed person or switching jobs, it can be a rough go.
Yeah.
And so being self-employed 50 plus, 60 plus makes a lot of sense just from a control and schedule point of view. But yeah, we know it's a challenge being your own boss. Your boss can be tough on you.
Well, you know what, Daisy, you said something that you just made me think of, that I was still at YogaWorks and we were at a retreat with a different group of people, that save all the details of that. And the gentleman I was having lunch with was retired, but he was with one of the big headhunting firms. And he started, I was I was in my mid 50s, still driving YogaWorks. We weren't at the sale yet. And, and that was tough. Plus, YogaWorks for the first years, was burning money. It's also tough getting up when you're managing business, not making money and all of that kind of stuff. But he said, man, it's tough out there. A guy in their 50s goes out there and there's just not jobs for them. And I walked away from that lunch, not scared, but like, wow, what if I leave YogaWorks? What am I going to go do? I'm not even going to be desirable for someone to be hiring in the market. So yeah, there was also some fear that if I don't do something on my own, then what am I going to do? Yeah. Plus, I didn't want to go work for anybody else. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what drives a lot of people to rethink their career moves in their 50s, because at that point, that's where that confidence thing comes back in, right? You've been doing things. I mean, you were at the helm of major organizations, and then it's like, well, why shouldn't you go out and take that step?
Yeah. In other words, like all of a sudden you're in your late 50s, 60s, and you've got all this great experience,
right?
Good and bad, a lot of mistakes. Of course, you learn from the mistakes, some victories, and it's like, what's all that worth if you don't go use it at this point?
Right. And so did your family, friends and family? Because when I started my business, everybody thought I was completely insane. Everybody thought I should go back into the corporate world. Or I was too old.
Naysayers.
I was in my 40s. So what were your friends and family thinking?
A lot of encouragement. A lot of encouragement. And again, I had a brother-in-law. We were at my wife's aunt's 90th birthday out in Palm Springs, and I'm telling him the story, and he goes, "Hey, I'm good for a thing." And I thought, really, that easy? And then I followed up with him, and he believed in the concept and must have believed in me, and that was a nice shot in the arm. And my son even put a slug in, my oldest son, which was great, telling that my son invested as I was telling other people. So not only did I get, I don't know whether you want to call it the emotional support of like, hey, this is a good idea, you should do this. But people also put money up on it. So that showed a lot of support. And my wife, of course, I've got a personal guarantee on a big lease here, which, when we look at our nest egg and what that means, and I got equity in the house and whatnot, and I had to look at it and like, well, if this goes bust, I'm still on this lease for X amount of years. That's a little scary, but that's when I went to her and say, hey, we're partners in this, because this personal guarantee affects you as well. So that was a vote of confidence. So she was on board with it. So to keep your answer short, I had support from friends and family. Didn't get a lot of naysayers, and that helped keep me going as well.
That's great.
Yeah, that is great.
I am curious, being a mindfulness instructor and practitioner, and we're all aligned on that. So just to talk a little bit about how you're helping others in their 60 plus years. So you're addressing the body and the mind in what you're doing.
Yeah, addressing, well, one, of course, when I remember, I went into YogaWorks, the sports club LA guy, Reebok, corporate guys are going to ruin yoga, so I had to move my way around there. But the mission from Highland Capital and Mark was, you got to scale this business. So then in itself, there was a strategy behind that. But by the time I left, I still do my TM every morning, 20 minutes. I got into meditation, been a vegetarian. So they got to me. But I started to see the power of mindfulness. I mean, yoga to me is a pathway to mindfulness. I could see that people, when they start to do yoga, the next step would be meditation. And there was even at one point at YogaWorks, I said, hey guys, we got to come up with our own meditation. And because this is the next wave. People, when I first went to YogaWorks, and I would tell people, sports club, we were the big sexy celebrity sports club competing with Equinox, and people go, you're into yogurt? I said, no, yoga. and then in the earlier stages,
not yogurt.
I even remember I went back to New York to one of these private equity guys when I first joined YogaWorks, and they would ask me, now, this is a business, Phil, because some people were even like, if you're into yoga, like, business is bad. So
lighting, yeah.
So I can honestly say, well, my journey into mindfulness personally was, and Betsy, you might remember who Dennis Waitley is. I don't know if you know. He's, I forget what it was, but he was in. I read him and I saw him talking. He was about positive thinking, visualization, and unwittingly, I always believed in positive thinking. So I used to buy my manager's tapes back in my sports club days for Christmas, like Tom Hopkins or whatever. And I was looking at the bookstore and I saw Tao of Leadership. I couldn't pronounce it at the time. It was the Tao.
Right.
And it was Dennis Waitley. And that tape just pulled me right in. And I dove in deep into learning about Taoism. And I thought, wow, this is for me. There's not a lot of structure. It made so much sense. Learned about ego. And I remember as I got deeper into Taoism, I could go into executive meetings at sports club and realize I don't have to talk all the time. I don't need to be seen and heard all the time. I can let the process take care of itself. So I started to learn a little bit more about myself through that and mindfulness. And then when I'm going to go to YogaWorks, I got the Bhagavad Gita and I started looking at all that. And I go, hey, I got this down. I'm a Taoist, And then I went in and I learned different about all yoga people don't fully have their egos under control, but there is, as Kimberly knows, Kimberly was probably one of the first ones to kind of break the main street into yoga. I think you used to have, wasn't your thing like no chanting, no
chanting, no granola, no Sanskrit, yeah.
So, anyways, that experience, and then my next phase of mindfulness when I started to get into this project was the science. I think I Dispenza, I can't pronounce his name, but Become Supernatural, this book that somebody had turned me on to, and you're starting, about neuroplasticity and the brain can heal itself. And I always believed in positive thinking. In fact, my mom used to call me old Mr. Positive, like it was a bad thing. And in this one chapter, he talks about the science behind, the fight or flight and negativity all the time, like a diet. If you're putting more negative in than you are positive, you need to manage that like you manage your diet, And all of a sudden I started to believe, hey, I'm right. There's science behind it. Positive is physiologically good for you, So, and now with all the science out there, why is it sitting in the back of a university somewhere or a clinic? Why can't it be in like a friendly studio that's open to the public? So that's part of my path to mindfulness,
That's great. Yeah, there are so many books and classes, and I'm with UCLA Mindful Awareness Research Center, and they have so many great classes, and there's so many UCLA mindfulness teachers all over LA and elsewhere. I know Susie had a huge impact on people.
Was that Susan Smalley? Is that the woman?
Yeah, Sue Smalley was the head of that research center for what? Well, I guess she is, and then so many teachers from there have come out, and so there's an annual. Let's see, what's it called? The Mindful Facilitation Program that a lot of us have gone through. That's a year-long program.
Well, it's interesting. His name escapes me. The CEO, he's gone. Dr. Martin actually went with him back east, and you might remember his name. But when I was at YogaWorks, we partnered with Donna Karen and her Urban Zen program and Rodney Yee. She had that vision of the integrated yoga therapist to treat people.
Right.
But what they ended up doing with UCLA is that CEO's vision was, if you're dealing with people that are dying and sick people, what about the caregivers? Mm-hmm. So they actually they didn't flip the switch on it, but UCLA Medical was paying for physicians and nurses to go through that program of self-care. So they were pretty progressive, UCLA.
Yeah, very. There's a lot of great work coming out of there. Yeah.
Well, in fact, so Dr. Neil Martin, who's kind of our medical advisor, I knew him from 1987. He was one of the first Sports Club LA members. He was one of the leading brain surgeons in the world. And Neil, I believe he used to run the neurosurgery, brain surgery at UCLA. And then Dr. Sarah McEwen, who Neil introduced us to, is a cognitive psychologist. She started the brain gym at UCLA. And then a bunch of docs and scientists left UCLA to go over and start the Pacific Neuro Institute in Santa Monica so they could have more freedom out of the bureaucracy of a big hospital. And Sarah went over there and started that brain gym. So not to move into that category, but some of the information and the techniques and the things we're doing are coming from some pretty experienced people with the science background in brain health. So
it's fantastic. That's very exciting.
Yeah. And my daughter's a doctor at UCLA now. So, go Bruins.
Keep it in the family. Yeah.
Wow. And so where do you see Q4 Active going? As a business,
I see it going, this is the flagship innovation center. The whole presentation to the investors to me, this is an incredible franchise opportunity. I mean, you look at what's going on fitness franchising today. Exponential's got 10 brands on their platform, nothing targeted at this market. Fitness studios are a hot category in the franchise area. Investor talk. What's your barrier to entry, Phil? Well, I don't really have a great wall of barrier to entry, but we are one of the first ones out there. So if we're out of the gate first, franchise will help you grow quicker.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of opportunity to watch franchises from I bring up Mark Mastroff again and his group that took the Crunch brand into a franchise and took the UFC brand into a franchise, and then watching some of my former executives at YogaWorks are running brands for Exponential. So I've seen it. My lawyer's got experience in franchise. So I know what we're going to need to do. We're going to need to bring the right franchise, support company in to do it. But think about this population. They're not just in Woodland Hills, Calabasas. They're all over the country.
Yeah.
And brain health, again, it's a big issue, not just in the United States, but globally.
Sure.
So here's the playbook. Get the flagship open, and what this first model might not be the exact franchise model, but we will tweak that. And what I see is, in the studio, we have our Q4 circuit, which is the fun class, which has the multiple stations with the cognitive integrated and the socialization. But I built a second room that I'm kind of calling the brain room, where with Dr. McEwen, my partner Tony, who's got education and fitness, we hired Dr. McEwen to work with him, and we've developed a 12-week brain. I haven't labeled it yet, but I'm calling it a brain boot camp, where it will be not part of the membership. It will be sold like you sell a teacher training, let's say. The cohort will be 4 to 6 people max. They will come in twice a week, and these are specific exercises that she's given us to go along with the physical that will focus on different cognitive domains. And, the vision there is that once we get that going, what a great program it could be. But 2, I see that as kind of a conduit for referrals. If people are coming out of a traumatic brain injury, or they're, again, early, diagnosis of early dementia or something, where do they go? And Dr. Martin even says it, and some people that have early on Alzheimer's, the doctors, what can they really do for them? The drugs aren't working.
Yeah.
The drug company keeps trying to come up with a drug. They're beating the drum on something every day, but where do people go? And I think we can be that. Just like in the gym business, we wanted to be, if you have orthopedic, great surgeon operates on you, surgery is only as good as the physical therapy or the rehabilitation. But then after that, it's what you do after that makes a difference. So I think there's an opportunity there. So when we get to the model, right now I've got both studios within the studio. I see that we could just have the circuit franchise. It's kind of like an F45, but sophisticated, geared at this market. And then I could also see the brain room being, 500-600. Maybe it's at a corner of a hospital. Maybe it's at a corner of a CVS. So I see a lot of opportunity for this as a franchise.
That's exciting. That's very exciting.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Super.
I look forward to checking you out. I'm heading down there next week.
What's that?
Look forward to checking you out. I'm heading down there next week to see you.
Well, next Thursday we're doing it's not going to be like a sports club grand opening, where we got Magic Johnson, and every, famous model actress around. But I'm doing a little ribbon cutting on Thursday evening with a little bit of an open house. But so if you're in town, it would be great if you could make it.
That's exciting. That's really great. Love your story, Phil. It's inspiring.
Very inspiring. Yeah, great.
Now we got to sell memberships. So that was the, but what's interesting is we started, the second hardest part of this, raising the money, and again, I didn't see it coming, but it was usually with the YogaWorks, we finally had it down from a lease signing to opening. You could look at a 6-month window. Well, that window went a lot longer, which was really frustrating and challenging, but the studio got open. It's a great location. It's beautiful. But with that, I stopped the market. We had pre-sold about 60 people without a studio, online over the phone. So I felt confident that, okay, that market is there and they're receptive to it.
Sure.
And then I kind of stopped. So we're picking up the engine again. But as far as the business goes, when I was explaining what I was doing is what I learned, private equity guys, a lot of metrics. What are your metrics? And I said, there's 3 metrics as business. It's not complicated. You got to sell, you got to keep utilization, you got to keep retention. And that's the game we're in right now. And I am confident that that we know the ability's there, the response is there from this market. If I could just tell you guys, we've been running classes, we're moving a little bit slow right now, but for the members that we have, the response, and I'm seeing the socialization, they're having fun, they're coming back, because now with today's technology, they have to book their class online because the limited space. I have on my iPhone, boop, you can see who's booking their classes, when they're booking. So I'm absolutely convinced that the market's there. We know how to sell the market. Now the investment needs to go into reach and bring more people in. Yeah. But it's happening and it's going to happen. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that I love about this, there's been so much in the press recently, and certainly because of the pandemic has pushed this along, but, just the epidemic of loneliness and how disconnected people are. And, if people can come together for fitness, we know how community serves us, and just makes us feel so much better. Even if you don't talk I'm not talking to everybody in the yoga studio, at Core Power, but I'm next.
But Phil, Daisy and I met in Core Power in a hot yoga sculpt class. That we were practicing next to each other. That's how we met.
I kept looking at her Yaz towel.
And I kept on looking at the tennis ball on her keychain. So
meant to happen.
Well, it's interesting. I still prior to opening, that was the other thing too. My schedule now my schedule's tightening up, but I was going to a gym every morning when it used to be a Spectrum. It's now a different brand by my house, and it also validated. Kimberly, you and I talked about how the older people you felt marginalized in the Core Power, and I see that in my gym. But to the socialization part, I go in and get out. I don't want to sit and chat around. If I start talking, I lose my momentum and then I want to leave. But I nod. I see people. I see the same people, and a smile here and maybe a good morning, and then I see the ones talking all the time. But when I was pitching for the investment, I kept talking about the importance of socialization and brain health, and the one person goes, Phil, you keep talking about this socialization. He goes, you got a model here that's going to cap out at 500 plus members. And, what kind of socialization is that? I said, you're looking at this wrong. We're not talking about having a cafe where everybody sits down and chats. We're talking about, I get the 9 o'clock people become a group. Like, where were you last week? We missed you. That you've got different time pockets of socialization. And I'm telling you, I'm seeing it played out. I was sitting the other day, and these people were coming out of class, and I was talking to these two ladies about, we got to keep moving as we get older. We're talking about all the physiological benefits. And one member walks by and she yells, "It's fun too." And I'm like, yeah. And then as she's walking out the door, she goes, "And I meet nice people here as well." And if I could have recorded that, but that's part of the component. And a good friend of mine, she runs at the Motion Picture Television Fund down here, their Department of Social Isolation. And I went to her symposium, and I didn't realize how dangerous it is for people's health.
Yeah.
And then you start to realize some of these people are sitting home, and they say that, like, a lot of reason they're always making doctor's appointments so they can go see somebody, not that they really need to see the doctor,
Yeah.
And it's interesting, as our average age right now, the people we have is 69. Some of the conversations are a little different. I'm a widower now. I lost my husband last year.
Right.
I had a gentleman, I'm sure I'll close it, he's going to join, but he was a proctologist. He's still working a little bit at 80, but he lost his wife a year ago. And I could tell this guy's lonely.
Yeah.
And some people, that's what they want. They can come around and be other people, and it's a reason to get out of the house. No, it's important. It's important.
Yeah.
It's important. It's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. All in all, you're doing amazing work, Phil.
We have to.
I've
got I got to work on that number one metric, which is it's showtime, and we'll get it. We'll get there.
Yeah, you will. Yeah, it's excellent.
Absolutely.
It's great, Phil. Thanks so much. We're behind you.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you, Daisy. Kimberly, it's good to see you again. We haven't seen you since you moved up there.
Yeah.
And if you are down next week, it would be great to see you.
I'll be there.
Yeah, we can go somewhere other than the Rose Cafe. We can do somewhere around here, around the Warner Center. All right.
All right. Tequila, though.
What's that?
I might have to come too.
Tequila.
Well, there's plenty of those places around here. Yeah. So, well, listen, I appreciate you guys, your time, and appreciate doing this. So this was kind of fun. You guys are easy. So thank you.
Yay.
Thanks for listening to the 60 Plus Best Life podcast. We hope you've learned useful and inspiring information today. We welcome your comments and also your suggestions of topics we need to discuss. If you know of someone you'd like to hear on our podcast, please share. We think of this podcast as a way to grow a robust community of people who are making life better at 60 plus. People who are living their best life. Thanks again for listening to, subscribing, and sharing the 60 Plus Best Life podcast.